When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of local politics and very, very local politics, local government issues with the Mayor of Cambridge, who, the impression I get, she tried to make the council a little bit more accountable and it was voted down at 28 minutes past 9. Now, Kerry Shannon is the Mayor of Cambridge. You might recall she swept to power in last year's local government elections. She campaigned very strongly against Simon Withers' council decision to allow housing in full in places like Floreat and City Beach. Well, she's got a new fight in her hands because she's trying to make a council more accountable and transparent when dealing with developers and architects and planners. Kerry Shannon joins me on the program. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Geoff.
What was it you were asking council to accept or proceed with?
I wanted a prohibition for gift to apply to the CEO and planning staff, and also I wanted a record to be kept by planning staff of their contact with developers and architects and planners for large-scale developments that occur in the town. Okay,
and why was that so important to you, and does that go back to last year's fight over infill?
Look, I guess it's more just a transparency initiative. I guess after coming into the role, I became really aware of the reliance that was put by elected members on the reports that are being prepared by the staff, and also really just the context in which the staff are having to relate to developers. And I felt uncomfortable with the idea that there's perhaps entertainment and things like that occurring with their staff could be. And it's just about perception. It's certainly not about the fact that there was any sort of conduct that was an issue. It was really just about that the perception that there could be some sort of influence.
Okay, no, I understand that. And John Carey and Vincent has been pushing very strongly for these issues of transparency in local government. So you are not suggesting anything, but you were just
Absolutely.
Concerned about. And how did council vote?
Both of the motions were refused. They were voted down. They were rejected by the council.
By a single vote, I think, was it?
Yeah, that's correct. Look, I mean, certainly some of the councillors appreciated that it was good governance, and in fact, one in particular came from a state government background, and she said, look, it's just accepted within government departments that you don't accept gifts.
Yes.
And it makes it easy for your staff because you just say, look, there's a total ban, and that's really where I was coming from.
Okay, so there's an acknowledgement by those who voted it down that it actually represented good governance. Then why did anyone vote it down?
I don't really know, and obviously, it's been a council motion, so therefore I can't really speak against it. I understand that they were concerned that it was somehow adversely reflecting on staff, and I was trying to make it very clear to them that really this is just a transparency initiative, and it really was just about achieving better governance.
Could you argue back, I'm not sure if you will, that it might adversely reflect on staff the decision of council to knock it back?
Look, I think it's a really difficult position that we've been put in now because obviously the motion didn't get up.
Yep.
I intend to still press this point because I just think it makes the playing field a lot easier for everyone to understand. Unfortunately, you have developers who are repeat players in the game, and I think that they do try and cultivate some sort of better outcomes for their clients, and they are going to achieve that because they are repeat players by the nature of their relationship with the staff.
And are you of the view that the way of cultivating better outcomes is to offer something, is to just gently, why don't you enjoy some of this largesse? Why don't you have some of that, and we'll look forward to doing business with you?
Oh, look, I think it's just human nature that when you become friends with someone, then when you come to exercise a discretion, you can perhaps think, well, okay, that seems a little bit more acceptable to me. I think it's just human nature, and I think that's really where, when you look at a lot of the bribery and corruption legislation that's been brought in, throughout the world, they just say, look, let's just ban gifts and let's just have a zero tolerance approach to these sorts of things because therefore there can be no perception.
I think quite a lot of our audience members would be very supportive of what you've said today, and it's one that we will keep an eye on. Will you have another crack at pushing it through?
definitely.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Her name's Kerry Shannon. She's the Mayor of Cambridge. 0437 922 720. I thought that was a very short but very interesting conversation as a mayor seeks to make the council particularly transparent. No criticism of you as an individual staff members. I'm not aiming at you at all, but I just think this would be a good thing to do, and it gets rejected. You're with Geoff. This is The Morning Show. It's 23 minutes after 9. Now, yesterday on the program, Kerry Shannon, the Mayor of Cambridge, spoke to us. She tried and failed to introduce some transparency and accountability measures into her council. She put up 2 motions to ban the CEO and planning staff from receiving gifts from developers and to set up a public developer contact register, but both were voted down 5-4 in the last council meeting. You might remember that Kerry Shannon was elected on the back of residential concern about some developmental changes in Cambridge, taking in Floreat and City Beach. So what she was seeking to put on the table was a little check and balance, and she wanted to make the point this wasn't a criticism of her staff or staff at the council. It was all about transparency, and it got voted down. And we thought that was unusual and perhaps even a little bit sad. And we got text from you saying, why the hell would you not support that idea? Now, these are the kind of measures that John Kerry and Vincent has been lobbying for a long time. And he now says that councils need to go even further and they should be banning developers from sitting on councils. John Kerry, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You heard that interview with Kerry Shannon yesterday. Were her ideas good ideas?
Yeah, look, and in fact, some of it we haven't even thought of. I mean, City of Vincent still remains the only council in Western Australia to have a developer contact register. So every time there's a planning application that's coming to our council and I meet with an applicant or have communication with an applicant, and that will be with a, say, Director of Planning in attendance, myself or a councillor has to record that. And not yet one other council in Western Australia has adopted that. And quite frankly, I think because it makes people feel uncomfortable that we're shining a light, and it's not accusing of any corruption practices or so forth,
No.
but we're shining a light on what are the cultures and practices of local government. Because any tier of government, if we look at federal, state or local, it is local that is making more decisions relating to development in our city.
So why do you think people are feeling uncomfortable? And why, in the case of Kerry Shannon, might some of those councillors who voted against it not be prepared to take that extra step that an outsider would look at and say, well, that's just tremendous. That's transparent. And if it's transparent, it leaves no opportunity for any claim of corrupt practice or improper practice. That's what we should be doing.
Well, I agree with you, and this has been part of the problem in the fight that I've been having is we have culture in local government that says everything's all right. She'll be okay, mate. That's the kind of approach. Or they say that we've got best practice. We don't in Western Australia. We're far behind on a range of issues. I mean, would you believe the City of Swan voted down to record their council meetings? But I think it is that people fear that if you make information publicly available, somehow then you'll be making yourself subject to criticism. I take it the opposite view, and that is we have nothing to hide. I think most local governments are doing their best and trying to do the right thing. But to avoid any perception, particularly given that density and development is high on the agenda, we should be open, we should be transparent, because when we inform our ratepayers, when we give them information, we make it easily available, it makes a healthier democracy because in return they hold us accountable for our decisions.
My guest is John Kerry, 1300 222 720. I wonder if you have a view on this because, again, and this kind of goes back to a statement I made some time ago about how you respond to whether there should be the return of the ABCC, whether there should be royal commissions into union corruption, whether there should be royal commissions into the banking sector. And some people eagerly support one and then not the other. But corrupt practice is corrupt practice. You surely want government to be as transparent as possible. And John, is it fair to say that, some people look at federal government with a certain amount of suspicion because it's big and it's overwhelming and it's out there, and then state government, well, they trust that a bit more because it's sort of local and here. But with local government itself, we expect that relationship to be really transparent, really open, really clear?
Well, I think in some ways because we are the nearest form of government to the people, and that people have a concern about their footpath or their roads and they come to local government. But I genuinely believe that we don't have anything to fear regarding greater transparency. In fact, we always should be seeking to do better. And around the world, we are seeing greater transparency of local government. But, we've seen New South Wales where things go terribly wrong. And that's why I am of the view that we should have a ban on donations from developers to local council candidates. We shouldn't have developers on councils, and we should probably look at real estate agents because they're in the industry. And as we know, local government, above any other tier of government, is making decisions relating to the development industry.
So you would like, and I know this, this may be a step or two away, rather than just being very clear that you want to keep developers at arm's length from council to the extent that they don't sit on councils, but maybe even someone who sells real estate for the same reason?
Yeah, and I think, look, we have to understand that local governments aren't alike state or federal where you have a formal opposition. You're effectively a board. That's the whole focus, is that you are a board which is guiding decisions and then, it is carried out. So this view that that's why I think that we can have more limitations. And I think that given that we deal with so many planning matters, yes, despite, development assessment panels taking some of those planning powers away, but we set the town planning schemes. We set variations and prescribed policies that if you're a developer, you may, even with your best hat on, still make decisions that either advantage or disadvantage yourself or a competitor. You're working in the industry. But again, I think we have to look broadly at other issues like hospitality. Should councillors at all be receiving hospitality from developers? These are the kinds of questions which I know are really difficult and uncomfortable for people, but I don't think we should be shying away from this public debate.
I'm glad that you asked the question. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
John Carey is the Mayor of Vincent. Andrew Timmermanis is a councillor at Cambridge. Very interested in what he had to say. Andrew, good morning to you.
Yes, it's actually Andre, Geoff. But,
I do beg your pardon, Andre. And I think you were elected in these last elections, so you were one of the councillors who supported the Mayor's motion here?
Oh, yes, I couldn't understand why anyone could find reason to not support the motions on transparency and accountability.
And when they didn't, did they give you any good reason as to why, or had they, as John Carey just suggested, got a bit uncomfortable with facing something like that?
Well, I think the reasons broadly could be summarised as, well, we haven't had a problem, so we don't see the need for measures, which of course is to ignore that you try and prevent problems by putting in robust accountability and transparency measures.
I remember Carrie Shannon saying yesterday that she'll have another crack at it in a few months. Do you think you convince your fellow councillors to change their mind? I mean, clearly you are of a similar view to John Carey here about the importance of this kind of transparency and anything to do with the relationship between decision makers and developers.
Oh, absolutely, Geoff. I've been in business for a lot of my life, and I know that if a business is spending money on hospitality, or senior people in business are spending their time to go and talk to people, it's for a commercial outcome. They're not doing it to be your mates. They're not looking to widen their circle of social friends. They're doing it for a business outcome. And I think in local government, which is in a bubble of unaccountability because of the Local Government Act, it's very, very hard for the community to get a direct voice into the operations day-to-day of the council.
Yeah.
That we need these very robust transparency and accountability measures to prevent, good faith people working in councils perhaps being subtly and unduly influenced by very clever marketing and networking campaigns that large companies and large developers in particular are expert at. That's their stock in trade.
Thank you very much for talking to us.
No, thank you.
Andre Timmermanis is a Town of Cambridge councillor.